Decrypted Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome again to the Decrypted Podcast. My name is Justin. I am your host, and today we have quite the lineup. A lot of fun coming in today. I want to thank everybody for still hanging out with me. I know it's been quite a while since we released an episode. A little over a month, and there's kind of to do a lot of stuff with personal stuff going on in my life and a lot of time constraints, and I didn't want to kind of force an episode out of nowhere and kind of just, have it be some kind of filler, and I was really determined to make that not happen. So in the meantime, we have been out in the field doing our normal cryptid research. We had the dog out there, we did our cattle moraine searches, we did our investigative research on the interwebs, and today we have a pretty fun podcast coming at you, so I just want to thank everybody again for sticking around with me. And before we get started, I want to ask if you have any encounters that you would like to share with me and possibly be a guest on the podcast in upcoming episodes. Please do so, and you can email me at the decryptedpodcast@gmail. That's not it's just decryptedpodcast@gmail.com, just like the spelling of the name, DECRYPTID podcast at gmail.com. Again, if you guys have any stories or things that you'd like to share to me, or just have any thoughts at all, you want to correspond with me at all, the email is probably one of the best places to do it. If you are not already, please make sure you follow the podcast on Twitter and at YouTube and at Instagram, all under the same name. Thank you guys very much again for chilling with me today. So let's get this day started. So I want to go over a few things right up front, and we're going to get to the bulk of the content. I'm not really sure what how long today's episode is going to be going for. The last episode that we did, I think I ended up really going on and rambling on. It ended up being a really fun episode, but I want to make sure that we are all kind of enjoying what we're listening to, and it's not just like, God, this guy just never shuts the fuck up. So we're gonna talk about it. But just to start off the broadcast here, I want to talk about some upcoming guests that we're about to have on the show. I have some authors from some coming books that are I have asked to be on the show. They have agreed, and I'm excited to talk to them. I'm not going to be naming names quite yet, because I don't want to give anybody any obligations before we really set some final dates. I am going to be a guest on an upcoming podcast. Again, I don't want to name the podcast quite yet, because again, more dates haven't really been finalized quite yet, but I'm very excited to be a guest on a podcast. I've never had that opportunity before. It's always been on, kind of my own cast. And even when we did our Twitch streams, that's all my content. So I'm very, very excited actually to kind of see what the interview process is going to be like from the other side of the desk. And we're just going to see how this goes. All right. Future casts are going to include, like I said, some upcoming guests. One of them is a good friend of the podcast and a good friend of mine in real life, and he is an actual scientist. He has a doctorate. He practices a science in his normal profession, and I'm very excited to kind of pick his brain. We went camping, him and I, over the summer, and I kind of really laid out to him. We'd had a few bottles of wine, a few beers, maybe a shot or two of whiskey, and we were just having a great conversation well into the night around the campfire about kind of what goes into studying this and being in the the paranormal research field. And it was really fun to hear an actual scientist who I know and can trust, and who understands scientific theory, and who also is open-minded enough to at least have the conversation with me. And that was really fun. So I'm really excited for him to join the podcast. He doesn't live in this country currently. So, but again, we're going to have to set up some firm dates here. So please definitely make sure you look forward to that. Just kind of the way the series of future casts is going to go too. I promise I'll wrap this up really quick, guys. The future casts are going to be me bringing on guests. I have a few other ones lined up. I think that it's only a series of episodes that we're going to do like this. So we're going to do I'm going to bring on people from everywhere on the spectrum of the paranormal, full-on believers to full-on skeptics, and then everybody in between. And we're going to do some more kind of famous cryptid sightings and famous paranormal acts that have kind of gone down. I'm going to read them a short story on it and kind of get them familiar with it. And then we're going to kind of pick their brain on how they feel and how they're interpreting this, and we're going to keep the conversation open and open-minded. If they hate it and they don't want to have anything to do with it, we're going to talk about that. If they love it and maybe you can change some minds, we're going to do that too. So I'm really excited for that. Definitely look forward to more social media content coming out, especially YouTube content. There were a few content episodes that I had done on our Twitter feed and Instagram feed that I had a lot of fun with, out in the woods in the kettle and out in the woods around my area down in Illinois as well. So please look forward to those that are coming out. I'm going to do a little editing on some of the ones I have, but definitely look forward to more. I did have a small encounter a few weeks ago, and it actually has driven me out of the woods for a few weeks. Just scared the absolute shit out of me. Nothing substantial, and I guess nothing that we can, rather substantiate, but certainly a moment where I kind of had to have a small realization about what's actually going on. So I was out hiking with the dog. The dog normally comes with me all the time. She's about 6 or 7 years old. She's absolutely the best companion to have on something like this. And we were out hiking and we came across a larger field, and we decided to kind of jump off the path just a little bit. The nice part about it is the weather here has been pretty cold actually for the last month or so. And it helped with the ticks, which was one of our bigger issues when we were going out in September, is that there were literally ticks everywhere. I would come off the trail and have like 6 or 7 of them climbing up my pants. And, I can't check the dog as thoroughly as I'd want, even though I did as best I could. So, but we were out there and we got off the path and we started in on this field, and we heard kind of a very loud crash. It almost sounded like a tree was falling over. It didn't have the gradual tree falling over sound. It was more of like a collaboration of just a big boom, a big crash kind of all at once. And then I kind of stopped in my tracks and I was like, man. Now, skeptics would argue, and I totally support this, that there's a saying, and I'll butcher it, no problem, but what do they say is a squirrel can sound like a raccoon will sound like a coyote will sound like a bear, in the woods. And all these things are amplified, especially when you're off the beaten trail and all that stuff. So who knows what it could have been, a deer for all I know, you know what I mean, just kind of ripping through the tree brush. But we all kind of stopped, and my dog has come across deer before, and we've seen them, and she doesn't really interact with them. I think she just kind of finds them puzzling. But normally she kind of barks at it and, scares it off. She didn't bark this time. The sound was probably about 40 yards away from me, 30 to 40 yards away from me, if I was going to guess. And it was kind of up the hill from where we were standing. And I said, I'm standing in the middle of a field at the time. So whatever's up this hill can see me, but I can't see it, assuming that, we're talking about any kind of cryptid sighting, which again, I'm not saying it was or was not, but it wasn't so much that what we saw, it was the way I felt. And it was a really puzzling experience because I've been going to the woods for a long time. I've seen a lot of things in the woods, coyotes, deer. I've never seen a wolf or anything like that. Nothing insane. I've seen bear, but very, 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 very far away. And that's when we were in Montana. There's no bears in this area. And if they are, they're going to be black bears, and they're going to be relatively skittish. So I wouldn't be too worried about that either. But whatever the crash was, had the dog and I looking at it for several moments, and that's when the fear kind of came over me. Like, what is going on here, and what am I dealing with, and where is my way out? This thing had kind of made the sound from the direction that we had came from, and the other direction in which we were going to run was just back into a bit larger field and then the larger forest, way away from the vehicle. So we kind of stood there for a minute, and the dog is very well behaved, so she didn't really do anything. She just kind of stood there, no whimpering, no scared, but she didn't bark, which is uncharacteristic of her to do something, to see something like that in the woods and not bark at it. I mean, I think it really scared her. And I think then we kind of started developing each other, or kind of feeding off of each other's fears. It was a very, and we can go into this later, but that's pretty much all I wanted to share with you guys. It was a very terrifying moment for me, and a very unrealistic fear in me. The pit of my stomach dropped out, my throat started getting dry, and I was like, why? And I questioned, I said, why am I so afraid right now? There's nothing going on. And if you watched anything on some of the stuff that's been happening in the Kettle Moraine, there's a phenomenal documentary out there on Amazon called Finding Jay, and I don't want to butcher his last name, but Jay Benochin, I want to say is his name, has a great documentary, and it's something to check out, and will definitely maybe keep you, it'll give you a little bit to think about when you're walking around in the woods, even if it's around your eyes, even if you're in Oklahoma or Nebraska or California or Oregon, upper mid, wherever you are. It's good to kind of have your wits about you. And kind of since that happened, I have not really wanted to go back into the woods for a while. So I do look forward to getting back there. It did take me, like I said, it took me a minute, and I don't have any evidence to support that it wasn't anything totally natural. So I don't want to jump to any kind of ridiculous conclusions. Like I said, it was more just my reaction and my gut fear that was kind of sitting inside of me. And I just did not like it at all. It didn't feel very good. And I didn't think we were far enough off the path or far enough even into the hike for the situation to even warrant the amount of fear that I was feeling. So, but yeah, so we're going to get back in there, but do look forward to that. That's going to hopefully maybe we could do like a little videotaping out there and put it up on the YouTube channel and see how that goes. So, all right, well, without further ado, let's get to kind of today's topic at hand. And it is kind of about the Skinwalker Ranch. Now, if you're not familiar with Skinwalker Ranch, it is a fascinating story. Probably hands down one of the most fascinating stories I've really gotten into, I'd say, over the last several years. Now, the story isn't about, we're not going to talk about Skinwalker Ranch and the things that happened. I think that's been covered by 100 different people. There's a phenomenal book out there, which is a lot of what I want to talk about today. It's called Hunt for the Skinwalker by George Knapp and PhD physicist Colm Kelleher. And him and an investigative, NIDS is what they're called, National Institute for Discovery Science, at the time when they were still around. They're no longer an operating body, but they came across a family who was having issues at their farm in a remote ranch in Utah, in the Uinta Basin, which is a northeast side of Utah, I believe, and a home to very special and very interesting sightings and a lot of insane things well before the documented situations that were going on at the Gorman Ranch, or Skinwalker Ranch as it's referred to in a lot of situations. And we're not going to talk about kind of what happened there, but more about what is proposed from what happened there. So one of the more fascinating parts about this is the family, the Gormans is what they're called in the book, and kind of just widely referred to as, and their names have now been released, their real names, and we're going to go with the Gormans here. But they purchased this land for relatively cheap. They're looking to get away. They're cattle ranchers. They show prize cattle, and that's all they want to do with their life. Tom Gorman and his wife, they just want to show prize cattle. They got 2 kids. They just move out here. They had to get away from the hustle and bustle of a remote town in New Mexico to get here. So you have to imagine how much these people value their privacy. And one of the things about Skinwalker Ranch, or the Gorman Ranch, is they got none of that. And certainly after some of the facts and the situations and the goings on there kind of came out, they got even less privacy than they wanted after that. But long story short, they started witnessing things that they could not imagine. And that's starting on day one. They're seeing wolves the size of cows. They're seeing apparitions in the sky. They're experiencing poltergeist activity within their home. We're talking UFOs, Bigfoot, dogmen, the fabric of reality itself kind of opening up in front of their eyes, and things that are so beyond unexplainable that you couldn't. It's difficult to just talk about without talking about it for the next 3 hours. The book covers it very well. Again, it's called Hunt for the Skinwalker, and I encourage you to read it. The book kind of goes off the rails a few different directions, and it's tough to keep the timeline together, but for the most part, the content is really fun, and it's really interesting to listen to, and it's really interesting to kind of hear what happened. But the most important part, and the part that I really wanted to talk about today, was the science that went into trying to find out what the hell was going on. So basically, all this stuff has been going on for about a year, and Tom Gorman, the owner and proprietor of the ranch, is tired of it. He's over it. He cannot handle it, and he finally, at his wit's end, decides to put out an article in the newspaper, which is picked up by Robert Bigelow, who is a billionaire. I think he made his business in the hotel business or motel business, but he has a very, very heavy interest in the paranormal and what's been going on there for a really long time. And he decides to create the National Institute of Discovery Science, or better known as NIDS. Now, before we get into NIDS, Robert Bigelow actually had been in the game for quite a while and did this really awesome thing where he went to, I believe it was like MUFON or SETI or maybe both. There were two major UFO research organizations that were claimed to be legitimate at the time. And he said, listen, here's the deal. I need you guys to figure out what the hell is going on here. And I have the money to give to you, the funding that you will need to kind of take on the aspects of science and the investigations that you didn't have before. These means that you will never have again, most likely. But I just need you to do this. I need you to work together and figure this out. And one of the things that we can all agree on in paranormal studies is the egos on some of these people that are in this business, and I think a lot of it is that they want to be the first person kind of out there to discernibly decide what is and what isn't paranormal, why or why not these things are actually going on. But he says, listen, I have billions of dollars worth of my own funds, and I'm willing to give you quite a substantial amount of money. I don't think the number was billions, but I'm willing to give you a substantial amount of funds. The only thing I'm asking you to do is work together and try to figure this out. And these two organizations are just a bunch of fucking jokers, and they couldn't get their own heads out of their own asses and their own egos deflated enough to share this information with each other. And the whole thing ended up going to shit, and he pulled out completely, and rightfully so. I mean, you're going to sit here and fund a huge situation like that, and these dildos and these practices just want to have all the information for themselves. And there's a lot of politics that go into this, that are behind the scenes, that they want. You have people in the business who are in the business to corrupt the business. You have other people who are in the business as honest people that want to have something to do with it, and they clash and they butt heads. And these two organizations, of course, are clashing and butting heads. And long story short, again, Bigelow pulls out. He's like, we're done. So when the Gorman Ranch comes up and he's sifting through the newspaper and he finds this article by Tom Gorman, he finds, okay, well, here we are. This is kind of exactly what I'm looking for. There is a gamut of paranormal activity going on at this ranch, and this guy who is having experiences beyond comprehension to any normal person out there. He all he wants is help. These people aren't, and every article that you read about Tom Gorman and his family, it always comes off the same. They're just normal people. They come off as very normal. They don't exaggerate claims. They don't really like to tell stories. They're just normal people who are looking for answers because they're putting a lot of money into this. Their prized livestock is going missing. Their house is in their jeopardy. Their land is in jeopardy because of all these strange phenomenon that kind of continues to happen here. Now, again, I don't want to go into a terrible amount of detail about the things that go on at the ranch, because you can read the book and you can listen to other podcasts who have probably done a way better job than I'm going to be able to do it, especially sitting here solo going on about it. But there is a phenomenal amount of information out here and a phenomenal amount of strange happenings that go. I mean, you have situations where 3 or 4 of his prized cattle, his prized steer, are shoved into a what is the word I'm looking for? A trailer that is sitting in the corral and padlocked and bolted, and they go missing. And hours previous to this, his wife and him drive past this thing, and they remark about how lucky they are to have all these things, and if anything should happen to these things, like, they would be doomed beyond. And you're talking about 800-pound bulls that something miraculously got to calmly walk into this trailer and then padlocked and bolted it shut. And it was, I mean, like I said, that is one of the more phenomenal parts of the story. I want you guys to, if you haven't already, to check out the book, or check out, there's a movie out there. It's the same guy who did the UFO movie that just received a lot of notification on Netflix. I don't really love the producer or the director or whatever his name is. He just kind of seems to, I don't know. We're not going to go into that. But anyway, I'll find that movie. But I believe it's also called Hunt for the Skidwalker. It's kind of more based on the movie. If you can kind of get past the artsy fartsy parts of the documentary and just get to the bare bones and the data, that's the part that's kind of very intriguing. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was Colm Kelleher and George Knapp's approach to this, and more specifically, it's really covering the last chapter of the way science, and that's kind of what the episode is about, the way science kind of perceives these phenomenons and how they interact with it in general. And I thought there were so many interesting tie-ins to this and so many interesting things that we could talk about here. And I think one of the things that we can all agree on is science's lack of science in these fields. Now, one of the frustrating parts about science is that and it's the same thing that we can't find Bigfoot bodies, and that's what they want, right? When you're talking about finding a Sasquatch, what do they want? They want a body. They want an arm. They want a leg. They want a finger, a tooth, whatever, some kind of DNA sample, which they pretty much had already, that would definitively tell them what this thing can be and what this thing can't be. It has to be natural. It can't be man-made. It can't be artificial. It can't be, and I'm not talking just about Bigfoot. I'm talking about paranormal phenomenon as a whole. It can't come off as artificial. It has to be natural because it can't have any biases. That's kind of how science is able to study these things. And what's happening is that you have an industry, which is basically what science has become, who views these type of activities and views these type of phenomenons as just that. It's just a phenomenon. It just happens. One of the last parts in the book, they discuss a 12-foot circle cut out of the ice on a pond on the ranch. Now, the circle is perfect in every way, and the ice isn't thick enough to provide any sort of person or object to stand on it and then definitively cut this thing out without breaking. Pieces of ice shavings were collected from the circle and then from a control point and tested, and pretty much came back with no results. But it had been very clear that something out there had cut this hole into this thing. Now, when scientists look at this, not like Colm Kelleher and unlike the people at NIDS, and we can talk a little bit more about NIDS in a second, are viewing these things, they need substantial evidence that this wasn't created as some sort of natural occurrence. And you could argue that there are ways to do this. So what they do is that scientists will look at this and say, hey, okay, you know what, it probably was just this. And then that's it. And that's it, because mainstream science doesn't want you to look into these things because there's no evidence, there's no physical evidence, there's nothing that can be done, there's nothing that can be attributed to these things in a way that will give them any kind of definitive answer. And it does sound counterintuitive. Like, obviously that's what you want, right? Like, that's what you want. You want to have evidence that can support the contrary or not support the contrary. You want to have evidence that is definitive in nature, that can say this is what this is and this is what this is, and that's how science works. Now, the problem with this is that science hasn't always worked like that. I mean, if you want to talk about the way science has worked for the last 500 years, that's kind of the direction that we're trying to go here. Like, okay, we have come up with these base ideas, and now current scientists over the last century or so, have only been able to conform to what they already know is in front of them. You're talking about 30 to 40 years ago, the idea of string theory or multiverse theories were like the most laughable things ever. When they were brought up 80 years ago by scientists, it was like, you have got to be joking. Like, what world are you living in? And now that is accepted. Multiverse, string theory, you're talking about wormholes that can take you to other times and dimensions. Those are things that are widely accepted, not only by scientists, but by skeptics alike. The math is there to support these things. The science is now there. Quantum physics is now at this point where it can at least give you a definitive measurement on how could be real. Now, it's beyond me and beyond the scope of many people who aren't scientists to kind of think about things in that manner, in that line, to think that there is an alternate universe, not only just one, but we're only going to talk about one. There's an alternate universe where there is me sitting at this podcast, and rather than talk to you about what I'm talking about today, I decided to talk about aliens for the next 2 hours, right? And then that every situation that you occur, a separate piece of reality is constructed in another universe, or multiverse rather, that continues on throughout life. That there are billions, that there are infinite amounts, not billions, because it's way beyond that. Infinite amounts of universes where infinite amounts of yous occur, making different decisions from the decision you just made, right? The book speaks on how there's infinite amounts of universes that will that would defy laws of physics. That rather than getting up during the day, making coffee, getting ready, going to work, working your day, coming home, having dinner, going to bed, all of it works in reverse. Where you take off your pajamas, you get your business clothes on, you work backwards throughout your day, you drive backwards through work, and time works literally backwards. It's difficult to wrap your head around without getting into the realm of science fiction, and that's what science doesn't like. But that's exactly what science is proving is completely plausible and completely capable of doing. So when they look at these anomalies at the Skinwalker Ranch, at the Gorman Ranch, and there's a great reference that they make to a ranch in Colorado who ends up dealing with the same thing, and a ranch in New Mexico who ends up dealing with the same thing. It's just the Skinwalker Gorman Ranch thing was kind of the big one. That was the one that kind of developed the most media frenzy around this thing. But you're talking about things that are happening in our lives and happening in our universe and happening to people around the world. This isn't just Sasquatch. This isn't just aliens. This isn't just UFOs. This isn't just poltergeist activity. We are so disconnected from the idea that something could possibly happen out of the norm that not only are we terrified to talk about it with anybody else, we have learned from the beginning since we were young kids at any decently educated person that it's literally impossible for that to occur. When that is in fact not true at all by today's current standards of science. We are in a position now where we are greatly just now starting to scratch the surface of what our understanding and what our reality is. Humans have been around for a long time. I'm not going to give you an exact time. I don't remember how long it's been, but we have been around for a very long time. And we are now just starting the last, 300 years? The last 100 years? Our movement in the position in our universe has come. We have gone at light speed from the cavemen banging rocks together to start fires, to looking back into the universe, to looking back into the stars, to thinking they were gods, having no idea. To when Copernicus could say, "Hey, that is a star. There are infinite numbers of stars. There are infinite numbers of galaxies, and there are infinite number of planets that revolve around those stars in those infinite number of galaxies." It's mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing. And then when you start to think about that is now accepted science, to think about what was 50 years ago as accepted science, to think that we are now, we're hitting this wall, we're hitting this wall of what we're going to try to believe and what we're not going to try to believe. There's a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. It's written by Thomas Kuhn. Okay. I haven't read the book, so I'm not going to speak too much on it, but he talks about how, and Colm Kelleher brings this up as well, how we're all, as these scientists in the scientific community are just engineers tinkering with old ideals, because we are so afraid and so terrified to think beyond that because there's no accreditation in that. Scientists who have every degree you could need, every possible realm of education that you could conceive to be considered a relevant and reality-based scientist, that you could go to them and say, "Hey, this person I would trust. This person has sat down in court proceedings. They have been hired by the FBI. They have been professors at universities." When they start to touch the realm of impossible, when they start to touch the realm of what we would consider the paranormal, they're shunned. They go through scrutiny, years of scrutiny. If they ever if they ever recover from that, they are forever known, rather, as the people who are in that realm, and they don't actually ever recover. And I mean to say, when they recover is when they've kind of look, hey, listen, like, it's not that I believe or don't believe in this. It's that you have thousands of people experiencing the same event. Now, beyond a shadow of a doubt, these people are experiencing something. It could be mass hallucinations. It could be cultural hallucinations. Is that what I don't think they're called cultural hallucinations, but it can be these cultural phenomenons that are developed, and all they're doing is trying to take a non-biased look at what those things are doing. And then all of a sudden, they're totally discredited by everybody around them, from where they teach, from where they've learned where they gotten their degrees. And then yesterday they were one of the most utmost and respected scientists in their field, and now they are laughed at and talked about in private circles as a complete lunatic. You can look at people like Dr. Jeff Meldrum, Grover Krantz, guys like the guy I just mentioned, Thomas Kuhn. Physicists, scientists, archaeologists, anthropologists, people in the study of their field who are doing nothing but doing exactly what science wants them to do are being discredited by the very science that they're trying to create, or trying to defend. Science has gotten to this wall. I went to a symposium on orca behavior and animals in captivity that was actually put on by my wife at the University of Madison, and where she got several scientists in the field of cetacean studies. It's basically the studies of dolphins and orcas, and there was a question and answer moment at the end, and I raised my hand and I put on my UFO hat and I put on my Bigfoot hat, and I said to her, listen, is there a possibility in your field of study, because the way we're approaching the study of mammals now is completely different from the way we were approaching them even 25, 30 years ago. Knowing that these things have feelings and have ideas, and the idea of becoming a vegetarian or vegan simply due to the idea that animals deserve better than what we are giving them. You know, I asked her, I said, listen, do you think that there is a group of people in your field that want to discredit the things that you're doing and the science that you're putting in behind these things to prove that whales can communicate with each other? You've all heard the songs, you've all heard whales singing, that can communicate with each other, that have feelings, that have social constructs within their pods, within their communities. Not just whales, mammals in general. There are people out there that want to discredit you and say they're just still stupid animals. And she was blown away. She's like, of course. She's like, I cannot, as a rational scientist, conceive why somebody would not only discredit the idea of what we're doing, but discredit the idea without doing anything to advise me on the contrary. Because it's not like people are coming in and saying, well, listen, I've actually done this research and that proves you're wrong. They're just saying, listen, 50 years ago, somebody already covered this. They're just dumb mammals. When that is 1,000% not the case, and have now been proven time and time again. It's unbelievable to think that we are sitting here using the same ideals of science that we were trying to do 100 years ago, because one guy said that was so, and that's it. Einstein's theory of relativity was just that, a theory. It wasn't a law. It's not the law of relativity. It's the theory of relativity. How the sun revolves around the universe, how the universe is expanding. Okay, we started looking at stars in a microscope and started doing math and noticed that the stars are moving away from us. Okay, well, that means the universe is expanding. But what we don't understand is why the universe is expanding and the speeds are gradually getting higher and higher. Because the idea of gravity would suggest that we can't actually do that that is not actually suggestible. And then we go back and talk about how we literally have no idea what gravity is at all. When the apple hit Newton on the head and he came up with how gravity works, he still doesn't explain to us how it works. There's still no explanation on how any of this is working. We do not understand gravity any more than when we did when he learned about what it was. We do not understand why the universe is able to expand at the rate it's expanding without gravity having something to do with pulling it kind of all back together, or at least slowing it down a little bit. And it is because we are sitting in the ice. We are sitting on the shoulders of giants that came before us. We are relying on data and science that has been here forever, that has never been contested, because mainstream scientists and mainstream science activists don't want to look at and propose any other different ideas. You know, most of the research done, scientific research is done, is funded by the government. Now, without putting my own tinfoil hat on here, there's not much I should have to explain to you. The government already controls a lot of what we know and understand. beyond, and I'm not even talking about beyond my theory of them having known about aliens and UFOs for a long time, regardless of whether Mr. Snowden dug deep into the files and the recesses of the NSA. Okay? That's not what this is even about. I'm going to take my tinfoil hat off and just ask you to look at the facts as they sit in front of you. If the bulk of the research is done by the organization that runs the country, who already limits our knowledge on certain other aspects, whether it be literally anything, whether it be the sugar industry's take on how meat is bad for you, whether it be the way that we approach the tobacco industry in this country, there is a limited amount of information that we are receiving from our government, and that's where the bulk of the finances come to fund the research that we're looking for. So to bring this back around full circle, you have a team of scientists given money, ample money by a billionaire to conduct investigations, to conduct research into a topic that they don't know much about. These people at NIDS did the right thing. They said, listen, we're going to take the most scientific, this is occurring. We are witnesses to these occurrences. There are 1,000 other witnesses to these occurrences. The entire Uinta Basin is teeming with this paranormal activity, whether it be lights in the sky, whether it be sounds from underground, whether it be creatures floating around through the woods or not. This whole area is coming up. So they went in there as scientists and say, we're going to do what we're supposed to do. We're going to do what science tells us to do. And they have received nothing but backlash for this. Explain to me how that's supposed to work. Explain to me how we are supposed to grow as a society, how we are supposed to further our ideas of what science can do for us if we're not able to look past what we already know. It's absolutely incredible. It's absolutely mind-blowing that this is where we have come, that this is where we are sit as a society. You can't get any kind of funding for anything that would even remotely appear paranormal. They won't let you do it. If it doesn't fall into the strict realms of science, and when I bring my friend on who is a scientist, we're going to get into this. I'm going to make him listen to this episode, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And the debate is going to be incredible. I cannot wait. But what we need to do is approach as investigators on, I'm so mad at myself because his name is escaping me right now. Dr. John Bindernagel. He said that Sasquatch isn't avoiding science. It's science is avoiding Sasquatch. How many legitimate scientists, how many legitimate the people who understand how the scientific process works are involved in, and we're just gonna pigeonhole this one thing, looking for Sasquatch? Since when? The 70s. There's probably been 10, maybe 10 that I can think of off the top of my head. Probably less, as a matter of fact. And not only are they not even recognized by their scientific fields anymore, but they're not even considered. You can't even consider these people scientists by the way that science is treating them. This topic has been avoided, and again, we're gonna stick to this Bigfoot situation. The topic has been avoided. When we first got to this country, when Europeans rather first got to this country, I was gonna say Americans, but that doesn't make any sense. When Europeans first arrived here, they saw things that they had never seen in their lives, that they couldn't even fathom. An elk. Here is a 600-pound deer, for all intents and purposes, with these massive horns, walking around. What in the shit is that? And there are tons of other things that are now known that when they got here, they had never seen in Europe before. And they had to kind of make their own decisions about what was here and what wasn't here. For there to be an intelligent species of bipedal hominids living in the woods 200 years ago, 300 years ago, that was literally like that probably when we got here, there was a bunch of shit we'd never seen before. There's a bunch of things we'd never even heard before. We had no idea when we got here what we were going to start seeing. And when we started seeing them, we had to ask the people who were already here, by the way. We came over here, we're like, this is our land. And people were like, we still live here, actually. We lived here for a long time. And the first people that came over here were respectful of that. They're like, okay, well, we're going to sit on this part of land, but can you just tell me we're going to go hunting for some food here, and we're going to go off over here? And they're like, don't go over there. Don't go over there. There's things over there that we can't explain. We've been here for 1,000 years. Now we've kind of moved off of the science aspect of it, but the point I'm trying to make is that we still have no idea what's in our own backyards on this planet. We have no idea how things work that we have claimed to understand for hundreds of years. Gravity being one of them. Light waves. Quantum physics is just now starting to get into and touch on these aspects that we never thought possible. String theory, multiverse. So when you have science that goes into the research at the Gorman Ranch and literally can conclusively come up with nothing, but again, explain, okay, I don't know. We don't know what this is. We don't know what this phenomenon is. But we're definitely going to tell you it's out here. We are definitely going to tell you that there is something going on that we cannot explain. Isn't that the entire point of science, is to now go out and figure out what the hell that is? It's not. We want it to be. We think it can be. We want it to be so bad, actually. But it isn't that way anymore. And it's heartbreaking. And it's heartbreaking for all of us. John Bitternagel also points out, after his science being shying away from the idea, is that when this happens, who gets put in the middle of this? We do. Believers, people who want and search for the truth, the Fox Mulders of the world. That vacuum, that void is filled with people who don't understand. I will be the first to admit, I don't have any idea what goes into the scientific process. I'm just out in the woods looking for a fucking tall guy with hair on his body. And there are plenty of people out there who do understand more of the scientific process, and I don't want to take that away from any of us. But what we have gotten to in this is we are being denied our right, almost our inherent right to understand what is in front of us that is not being explained. And it is so frustrating for those of us who want to believe these things, for those of us who do truly believe in these things. You know, we want so bad for these things to be, and we get no support from the people who are supposed to be supporting us. There's no support coming from the other side. If you want to be a scientist and you want to tell me that there's no way that this thing is out there, I am going to accept that from you. But first, you need to do some goddamn homework. You don't just get to tell me it's not out there because theory says that it doesn't. We're way beyond that now. Enough people in this world have seen things that are so unbelievable and unexplainable that we cannot continue to deny what is happening, to deny what we are seeing and what we are feeling. I would be the last person to talk to about ghosts and poltergeist activity, but I have a really great friend who is into serious ghost and poltergeist study, and the conversations that I have with him are absolutely fascinating. I don't want to believe that, right? Like, that's kind of like my take on that, and I don't want anybody mad at me for that, but that's my honest. I don't believe it. There's something about it that I don't. It's not that I don't believe it, because I do believe it. All right, that makes any sense. But it's like, that's just not my area of research. That's not what I want to like go with. I'm excited to have him. I'm excited to have him on as well, and to hear his story. And he has a phenomenal story that I don't want to ruin for you. But his mother died, and he basically, right after her death, saw a full body apparition, and she spoke to him. And I think a lot of, in my head, what I wanted to say was, okay, this is probably a lot of stress in the brain, right? Like, from what I understand about high stress situations and a lot of anxiety and loss and trauma, that your brain can kind of conduct these things and make you think what you think you saw. But then when I think that to myself, and if you've been listening and you haven't turned me off, then what have I been saying for the last 45 minutes? That is a belief that was instituted by a group of people who refuse to think outside the box in any way ever again. Who refuse to look at the way that we can kind of perceive things because it doesn't fit what they understand already has been given to them. It's been an insane journey so far. And being part of this has been so crazy for me. For the last 10 years, since I saw what I saw on the side of Highway 57 on my way down to Southern Illinois University, just south of Effingham, has changed my life forever. And when I first started doing this, it had to be flesh and blood creature that I saw. It had to be doing this, that, or the other thing. There's no way it wouldn't be, because, oh, you know what I wanted? I wanted the acceptance of mainstream science to agree with what I was believing in. Because I wanted science to believe what we're all doing out there and searching for the truth. And I don't think that's a capability anymore. I don't think like that anymore. When I first got into the topic of research, I would have laughed in your face if you tried to tell me dogman situations. But then we did our Beast of Bray Road episode, and I went down to Bray Road, and I didn't see anything. But I talked to some local people about it, and they didn't really want to talk about it anymore. They'd had their fill of it. But there's a strange aura to that area, as there I'm sure would be a strange aura to the Gorman Ranch, where what seems like the fabric of reality is just a little bit thinner. And maybe Elkhorn, Wisconsin is one of those places, and maybe not. And maybe what these people saw were just a giant black dog, an anomaly in a species of mammal who is known to the area. But maybe not. But I'll tell you what didn't happen. Nobody of any credited or scientific background went and checked in on it. It was left to people like you and I, up to documentary creators like Small Town Monsters and Seth Breedlove, to create a movie, to create an idea of what's going on there, to Linda Godfrey, to bring it to the national light. And what did we eat it up, and that's phenomenal. But the people who are supposed to be out here, the people who are supposed to be the ones creating this atmosphere for us to rely on them for, have failed us time and time again. Now, I want to be very clear about something. There are plenty of scientists out there doing legitimate scientific research on legitimate scientific issues, and they're doing a phenomenal job. I am talking about the scientific organization as a whole. In my opinion, has lost their way. And one of the best things about it is the guy is my friend that we're going to be having on the show. He agreed that it must be difficult. Now, he didn't want to lend any credence to what I've seen or lend any credence to what I believe, which is totally understandable, because that's how he's been taught to approach things. So it's frustrating to have these experiences for all of us, for all of you believers out there, for all of you witnesses, for all of you knowers, for anybody who's ever experienced anything. I don't even mean seeing a UFO come out of the clouds and shine a light on you. I'm not talking about having a face-to-face Bigfoot encounter. I'm not talking about seeing full-bodied apparitions. I'm talking about you moving one thing from one place to another, and it ended up back in that other place, and you're like, what? How did that happen? Or seeing something out of the corner of your eye that you pretty sure you know what you saw, and it was in broad daylight. And for those of us who are terrified for a long time to talk about it with anybody, science has failed every one of us, and scientific theory and thought is starting to fail us even more. And just in this, again, I'm speaking in the balloon of what we're dealing with here. I'm not talking about climate change. I'm not talking about, tectonic plate shifting. I'm not talking about poles reversing. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about within our own vacuum of paranormal science or paranormal research. There are great people out there doing great jobs, but it just feels like the community at large seems to be against us for one reason I don't think any of us understand. I don't think any of us can discern why we're doing this. So I just ask that you and the people that you deal with, I hope they're as open-minded as the people that I've come across. I hope that you are as open-minded of what can be and what cannot be. You know, if you believe that Sasquatch or Bigfoot is a flesh and blood creature, you should do that. You should believe that. But do not discredit the people who believe that it could be a creature that could walk between different realms of reality. And I'm not saying I'm even in that camp. I'm just saying that I think if we're going to believe one story, we need to stop reacting so negatively to other stories. And that kind of goes back to the egos that drove the two UFO organizations apart from Robert Bigelow's money. We need to get our own egos in check here, our own idea. None of us have any idea what the hell we're doing out here. And that includes people. We're as Joe Rogan famously put it, we're on a rock flying around a sun in the middle of the universe. We have no idea our understanding in this world. If you have a religious belief that you feel like you know, good for you. I'm not going to sit here and discredit that. But there is shit going on that we can all agree with. There is shit going on that we can all get behind. That doesn't make a lick of fucking sense. If you are a fan of this show, if you are a fan of any kind of paranormal activity in your entire life, you know damn well that there are things that just were, what? What the fuck was that? What did I just see? What just happened? What was that noise? We've all experienced it. Everyone, whether they believe it or not, has experienced something paranormal in their life. I'm positive of it now. Because as I continue to bring this up, and now the best part about knowing what I know now is that I'm an adult and I could give two fucks less what anybody thinks about it. You hate my podcast, you hate my podcast. I go to bed at night either way. I might not sleep at night because I got 9 cups of coffee in me, but I go to bed either way. I accept that you don't get it. I accept that you think I'm a lunatic. I don't care anymore. I get to sit here in front of the microphone and explain to you my thoughts and actions on it, my ideas and theories behind it now. I'm not going to shy away from it at all. I have an alien abduction scene tattooed to my arm, and I get asked questions about it every day. Every day. What's that tattoo mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's just a guy getting abducted by aliens. Whoa. Like abducted? No, I was not abducted. Do you like believe that people were abducted? Yeah. Think that there's like aliens out there? Yeah. Really? Yeah. I got a tattoo to my skin for a reason. It's just for fun. It's just good times, good thing to think about. That's how this works. None of us have any idea what the fuck is going on here. So we chose this to believe. We chose this to get behind. And don't let anything else take that away from us. If you are young and in this business, if you are new to this, do not be afraid of these people anymore. Not only now is it more accepted to talk about and deal with, but now it is more readily available for information for you to counter whatever kind of goofy theory they have against you. I think rant over about that. And I hope you're still listening. I really hope you enjoy this. This will be one of the last episodes I kind of do this on. This wasn't off the cusp. I am free talking. There's no notes in front of me or anything like that. So I do apologize if that got a little ridiculous for a little while for some people. And definitely look forward to the other episodes where we're going to have more of a conversation. It's more of a conversation podcast than it was before. So we're going to see how this goes. But what I really wanted to talk about today, what I really wanted to drive home was that after reading Hunt for the Skinwalker, one of the most fascinating takeaways that I had was that real scientists went into this with real science methods and came out on the other end and could not explain anything. And they didn't stop there. Now, NIDS did disband and has since become something else entirely. And that's fine. But the problem is that there's not enough people out there doing this. And that's common knowledge, right? Like that's common knowledge for all of us. But make sure you start challenging these ideas and these people who have something to say about it and ask where the science is to disprove these things. and then ask them how old that scientist how old that science is, because they don't have answers for you. In my experiences now, they don't have answers to answer that far. Well, it's all common knowledge that it was common knowledge for 600 years ago that the Earth was probably going to be flat and you could roll off the fucking side of it. It was common knowledge in the 16th century that it actually rained frogs. Okay? We are in the infancy of what science is giving us, and in the infancy of what our understanding is of our place in this universe. But don't let these people tell you otherwise. I want to thank everybody for listening today. It was a shorter episode. It's not really that short, but I think I rambled on about some shit in the beginning that maybe you didn't care about. But I hope you guys enjoyed the episode today. It was definitely, like I said, it's probably gonna be the last of this kind of format, unless I find something else that's driving me insane. So I want to talk about just one other thing. Like I said, we do have the episodes that are gonna kind of start becoming a little more Bigfoot Sasquatch oriented. That's with the new series of episodes that I'm going to be bringing out, that it kind of involves experiences, like real documented experiences, but that doesn't limit us to just Sasquatch encounters. You know, we're going to talk about the Phoenix Lights, the Coronado group abduction. You know, we're going to talk about like haunted situations, although I'm probably going to leave that alone until I get more into that and get my buddy on so we can kind of do some more explaining. So, but I really hope that everybody enjoyed today's episode. Do not forget to make sure you email me at decryptedpodcast@gmail.com. And let me know what you guys think of the episode. Even if you hated it, I love to hear, and I would love to talk to you guys. And if you don't already, make sure you follow me on Twitter at decryptedcast, at decryptedpodcast on YouTube, and Instagram, which I'm having so much trouble getting into Instagram. I can't lie to you guys, but we do have a good amount of followers on there, and we do have a good amount of followers on the the Twitter account. And then mentioning Twitch as a Freudian slip, I think I'm going to try to do a weekly live cast where we just kind of talk about goofy shit. And the problem with doing stuff on Twitch is that the community has been very supportive in a lot of ways, but is like incredibly toxic and non-supportive in a lot of other ways. So I'm not really sure how we're going to go with that. I'm not really sure what the date and time is going to be on that, but that is something to look forward to. That probably won't start until 2020. So it is, November 17th today. So look forward to that in about a month and a half, but definitely look forward to next week's episode, which will begin dropping on Sunday. And I will have a guest that week, and we will be discussing what I believe is going to be Ape Canyon. So if you are familiar with the Sasquatch activity of Ape Canyon, do make sure you look forward to this episode. I'm not sure if my buddy, the scientist, is going to be on next week or the week after, but we were definitely going to have a guest on next week. So guys, thank you very much for listening today. Thank you very much for being a fan of the podcast. Thank you very much for all of the support on all of the social media that we've ever had, all of the conversations that you guys let me have with you. And I really hope that you enjoy the rest of your evening and the rest of the day to follow. My cat is literally screaming at me if you can't already hear him. I accidentally locked him in the room when I'm doing the podcast. He was sleeping when we started, and now he's freaking out about it. So you guys are amazing. As always, take care of yourselves. Believe everything you see. I don't think that's good advice, but either way, you guys have been amazing. Make sure you guys do follow on the social medias, Decrypted Podcast. Just give it a search, and make sure to check out our episodes on YouTube and on Spotify and probably Google Podcasts. And then eventually, when I'm not too lazy, we'll put this on the iTunes podcast. Guys, thank you very much. I will see you next week. This was the Decrypted Podcast.
Welcome to the Decrypted Podcast.